Video 4, Shot and Roll Counting. When we talk about shot counting, most players think of something like this. Position like this, we're on roll, we roll 6-2, and we're forced to make this play. Our opponent decides they want to cube us, and we ask the question, how many times does our checker get hit and put on the bar? And that's why a lot of people, when they talk about this, they talk about shot counting. But we also count rolls. There are many positions where we just need to know the number of rolls, and it doesn't involve a checker to shoot at or a checker to be put on the bar. And the good news is that shot counting and roll counting are basically the exact same thing. And in this video, we're going to do a position that demonstrates roll counting without any shots to be hit. Now, from the first 3 videos, I did get a few questions and a few emails on what exactly is the plus equal trick. Now, the plus equal trick is nothing more than a memory trick. It's a memory trigger that I use for myself because I don't like to just memorize a list of numbers to use in backgammon. I like to visualize what's going on. 1 plus 2 equals 3. And that's this right here. It's like an acronym. This is my memory trick for shots. There's my plus, there's my equal, and there's my 3. So if I have one number I'm looking at, or one direct shot, I think of the plus, one vertical line, one horizontal line. If I have 2 numbers, 2 direct shots, or 2 numbers that are relevant to my position, I think of 2 horizontal lines, 2 vertical lines, plus, equal, and 1 plus 2 equals 3. If there are 3 direct shots or 3 numbers that I'm looking at, then my number is 3. And I visualize 3 horizontal lines, 3 vertical lines. And I'll do a quick review of these and these numbers before we get into our position today. So here's a very quick review of our 3 starting numbers. And our 3 starting numbers are 11, 20, and 27. So that's our 1, our 2, and our 3. And using, call it shot counting for this. Looking at shot counting, if I have 1 direct, that's 11, 30%. If I have 2, it's 20, 55%. And if it's 3, it's 27 for 75%. So let's do our review of our chart. Quick look at all rolls that contain at least 1 1. It will look like this. And we have 11. What if it was any roll that contains at least 1 2? It would simply look like this. It's the same. It's 11. What about any roll that contains a 3? 1 horizontal line, 1 vertical line. It's the exact same. Any roll that contains a 4, same. Any roll that contains a 5, same. And any roll that contains a 6. For a quick review of a single shot, for example, a single direct shot. And since it's always 11 and the location does not matter, I always look at it top to left with my 6s on the upper left. Since I'm using this as a memory trick while I'm playing, I want it to be consistent. I don't want it to be different every time. So even if I'm looking at any number that contains a 3, I still see it this way. I see the shape, I think of the number 11, 30.5% pops into my mind immediately. And I like this better than just memorizing a list of numbers. Now, if we have, for example, any roll that contains a 3 or a 5, using our plus equal trick, equal is 2 horizontal lines, 2 vertical lines. And just like with the single direct shot, the location of these does not matter. So I always look at them all the way to the top and all the way to the left. I'm not going to go through every combination here. This is just a quick review. So this is 20, and that is 55%. And if it's any 3, it's just 3 vertical and 3 horizontal, 27, 75%. We haven't used this too much, but this is very handy. And if you look at this, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. This is 3 quarters, 75%. How many of the rolls do not contain? 1 quarter, 25%. So these are very important numbers. And I can't imagine there's been a time where I've played backgammon for an hour or 2 or a couple hours, and I haven't used this. And sometimes I feel myself, I'm using it every single game. It is that important to learn and to apply. So here are those 3 numbers. Any roll that contains a 1, any roll that contains a 2, any roll that contains a 3, any roll that contains a 4, or a 5, or a 6, they're all the same, they're 11. Any roll that contains a 3 or 5, or any other combination of 2 numbers is going to look like this: 2 horizontal, 2 vertical. And every time I see 2 numbers that I'm looking at, or a double direct shot, it always looks exactly like this in my mind. And for 3 numbers, it always looks like this. For these 3 numbers that are 30.5%, 55%, and 75%. And again, the plus equal trick is, again, just a memory trick. Plus equal 3. It's a memory trick so that when I'm in positions, these numbers immediately come to my mind. I don't waste any time thinking about them. And if I do decide that I need a more accurate number, I've already got my starting number. I'm already halfway to my answer. So this is my way of helping to memorize and also teach 3 of the most important numbers in backgammon as you're trying to strategize and make decisions about your checker play and also the cube. There's your 1 horizontal line, 1 vertical line, 2 vertical, 2 horizontal, 3 horizontal, 3 vertical, plus equal, and that's your plus equal trick. So here we have our position, our starting position for this video. We're on the bar, and we are on turn. It is our roll, and we have our opponent trapped behind a nice 6-point prime. These checkers can't move. But our opponent also has us trapped behind their prime. And we want to get a feel for this position so we can make a decision on our play. Are we going to roll our dice, or are we going to cube our opponent in this position? Now, what is the most likely scenario that's going to play out? If we roll and we come off the bar, so let's say with 2-5, we're forced to play the 2, and now we're forced to play the 5. If we come off the bar and collapse our position, our opponent's checkers are going to escape, and it should be a very easy win for our opponent. So we can come to the conclusion that coming off the bar is very dangerous for us. What if we stay on the bar? These checkers can't move for our opponent if we bounce, and our opponent will be forced to play any roll that they have. So our opponent starts to collapse their position, and if we escape our checker, we're going to have a very easy win. So a quick evaluation, we can determine pretty easily that coming off the bar is very bad for us. So let's get an approximate number to get a feel for this position so we can make a very quick decision on if this is a cube or not. We come off the bar with what? We come off the bar with any 1, 2, or 3. That's 3 numbers. And the way we look at 3 numbers, we have our image, our chart, 3 horizontal lines, 3 vertical lines, 75%. 27 rolls come off this, 75%. So 75% of the time, we are not going to be happy, and we are most likely going to be collapsing our board and letting these checkers escape. So we're able to do that pretty quick because we have the shortcut. So we're not going to cube here. 75% of the time, our opponent's going to be happy, and only 25% of the time do we get what we want, which is staying on the bar. What if this was our position? How much has changed? We still don't want to come off the bar and collapse. We'd rather have our opponent collapse so we can have an easy win. What are the odds that we stay on the bar? Well, we know we exit the bar with any one or two. Any one, any two numbers. We simply use our shortcut. Any two numbers is two horizontal lines, two vertical lines. Helps us remember this and come up with this very quickly. And that's 55%. So about 50% of the time, we're very likely to collapse our board and be in bad shape. 50%, not good enough to cube. What if this was our position? Same thing. If we collapse, our opponent could have a very easy win. If our opponent collapses, we have an easy win. How often are we unhappy? We're unhappy when we come off the bar, and it's anytime we roll a 1. That's only one number. One horizontal line, one vertical line, 30%. So if 30% of the time we're not happy, that means 70% of the time we get what we want and we stay on the bar. 70% is a pretty big number, and this is actually a cube because now our opponent is very likely to collapse. In fact, 30% of the time. So what's interesting here is that by having these quick reference positions memorized, and you don't have to do this like today. If you're new to backgammon, these are very important. Over time, you'll start to see sequences and positions where you can apply this, and being able to come up with these numbers instantly without doing any math, especially if you were able to visualize this. We're not really counting. We've seen it before. We know what these numbers are, and we can come up with these estimates extremely quickly and help us make a good cube decision. So we see three numbers. 75% of the time, we're probably in trouble. Now, there are a few sequences where we come off and we don't break and our opponent breaks first. So we said we only bounce 25% of the time. It's actually a little higher where we survive a bad situation. And the win percentage here is actually 40%. It's not as bad as the 25 that we were looking for, but it's still very low. A quick estimate helps us come to that conclusion that our win percentage here is very low. On the second variation of this, about 50% of the time, we get what we want. 50% of the time, we're very unhappy. And the win percentage for this is right around 50%. It's pretty interesting that that's pretty accurate. In our third scenario, 30% of the time we come off, so 70% of the time we get what we want, we stay on the bar, our opponent will collapse before we do, and the win percentage for this position is almost exactly 70%. Pretty accurate, just for a quick estimate. And again, we didn't do the math from scratch. We know our numbers. You'll pick them up as you play. And I think for many of you, for me personally, having these pictures in my mind really helps to visualize these. And in play, with practice, seeing these numbers in that position, it can only take a few seconds, which is really great when you're playing because you can use that extra time to look at other aspects of your position and save a lot of time. And your play will get a lot more fun when you can see these things and you feel you're making a reasonable estimate of what your win percentage is, and that's going to help you tremendously making cube decisions.